Israel, Israel, Israel. Why do I always have to start a children's story like this? Maybe because we as people are really good at messing up. I know that there are many times in my own life where I'd have to start a story by saying, Danny, Danny, Danny. So here we are again. Israel, Israel, Israel. Israel wanted a king and God said, no, we don't want a king. Kings do all sorts of bad stuff. You don't want a king. They begged and begged God for a king and they got one. And lo and behold, a lot of really bad kings. One of the kings was named Manasseh. And Manasseh brought in all sorts of religions from other parts of the world. Stuff where they were doing all sorts of bad things. They were sacrificing their children and just a bunch of horrible things. Manasseh had a son and his name was Ammon. And when Manasseh got killed, Ammon took the throne. Well, Ammon continued in his father's footsteps, and they were continuing with the child sacrifice and all the horrible things that they did in the name of worship. Well, eventually, a group of people decided that they were going to take out Ammon, and so they assassinated him. And everyone got together and they decided that his son would be king. And his son, at this time, was only 8 years old. 8 years old. That's really young. In the United States, you have to be 35 to become the president of the United States. And he was 8 years old when he took the throne. But the Bible says that Josiah, Ammon's son, never strayed to the right or the left from God. And it's an amazing story that Josiah has, right? Because Israel, under his grandfather and his father, had gotten so far from God that the temple wasn't even being used. And all the writings of Moses were gone. No one knew where they were. But Josiah still followed God and didn't stray to the right or the left. Well, when Josiah was 16 years old, he decided it's enough of the adultery in our country. We are going to get rid of it. And we're going to end the sacrificing our children and all the horrible practices that other religions had. And so he went in and wiped it out. And after it was wiped out, he decided that they were going to rebuild the temple. And so they started rebuilding the temple. And he says, let's collect gold and silver and let's make the temple a beautiful place for God again. And while they were rebuilding the temple, they found the writings of Moses in the temple. And it was amazing. Josiah was so happy that they found the writings of Moses because it had been so long, he didn't even know about them. And so the scribe starts reading it for him. And while he's reading it, he just starts realizing the depth that they had fallen from God and how their country had just walked away from him entirely. As they were reading it, the Bible says that he ripped his clothes, not as like a celebration, that's a sign of mourning, because they had fallen so far from God and they had been so comfortable in that life, they didn't even realize how bad it had gotten. And that's something that I want us to remember, is that we can live in a culture and we can get used to it and we can get comfortable with it. And we can get so used to it and comfortable that we don't even realize that there are bad things going on. But when we open the Bible and we see the life that God had intended for us, then all of a sudden, the things that we thought were okay no longer become good enough, right? Because we want to be closer and be more like God. And so in today's society, where we can get so comfortable that we miss that close connection with God, the Bible becomes more and more important to us. And we are so lucky to have that book. It changes lives. It changed Josiah's life. It's changed my life. And it's something that I think we take for granted today. So children, even as a young kid, Josiah wanted to follow God. And you, in your young age, you can have that same desire and passion. And when you open the Bible and see how amazing God is, it just becomes better and better, and it changes your life and the life of people around you. Josiah was in the position as king to help a nation. But in your life, you can have better relationships with your parents, better relationships with your brother and your sister, better relationships with your friend by opening this amazing book.